This is Melissa, and this Redux is for Sunday, October the 1st, 2023, which I am recording on Friday because I had such a bad day yesterday. I thought that I would share it with you while it was fresh on my mind. The topic is property taxes. My brother and I share the home that my mother and father built 50 years ago this year. And we received the new tax estimate, and the tax board said that this home was now valued at 40% more than it was last year. And this seemed to have no basis in reality. And we are not strangers to tax protests. This was my third and my brother's fourth, so we went very prepared yesterday morning to our hearing. I had taken probably 100 photographs of all of the decay and damage on the house. My brother printed out 30 of those. He had done a lot of work, and on the drive over, we both said, we have a rock solid case here. Of all of the protests that we'd participated in, we just felt so strongly that they had completely made a gigantic mistake. There was no way that this could possibly be supported by them. So we went and we made our protest, and we were denied. And so what this has done to our bill is it has nearly quadrupled it. It has more than tripled what our annual taxes will be. Now, we plan to protest this further, but that's the current situation. So we've gone from having a bill that he and I can split, and we can budget about $100 each per month, and at the end of the year pay it. And now we are looking at a mortgage, what really would have been a nice tidy mortgage 15 years ago. As Alan Watt always explained to us, mortgage comes from the French word, and it is the gauge of death, mort, death, that's something that you will be paying off until you die. Now, my parents, having built this house 50 years ago, the cost to build a home was considerably less than it would be nowadays, and they paid off that mortgage more than 20 years ago. But this is the plan. This is the system that we're in. And I thought that I would play a little bit, some edited segments of a series of talks that Alan did in 2006 and 2007 with Miss Effie, a woman in her 80s who lived in Louisiana. And his talks with Miss Effie and other talks that he did with someone named Butch who lived in West Virginia, those were part of the inspiration that I had for doing Real History. He spoke with real people about their life's experiences. And in the series of talks he did with Miss Effie, they had some nice bits of conversation about the slave system, the end of private property, taxes, and so forth. And so that is what I will be playing for you. When we left the hearing, when both of our experiences with protests has been, you present a good case, you look at the comparables in your area, you document what the condition of the home, et cetera, and you generally leave one of these hearings with a pretty good reduction in what their appraisal was, and that appraisal then goes into how they factor what your bill is going to be. And sometimes the reduction can be quite significant. Well, we stood there as they discussed amongst themselves the fact that they could increase the depreciation on the home. I mean, after all, it's 50 years old. They could see themselves the photographic evidence. So the 4 members of the board and then the 2 appraisers that sit there and the secretary, so there's this whole discussion going on where we are standing there listening to them say, well, we could do this. We have flexibility here. We could lower it by this. We could lower it by that. And I'm sure that my brother felt the same way, but I was feeling, great inside, like, oh my goodness, I think they're actually going to reduce this significantly because they say that they can. And then one of the women on the panel said, I vote that we leave them as is. And someone said, I second that. And then there you go. Unanimous. They voted to keep them as they were with no reduction. So when we realized what this was going to do, that we were going to be faced with this mortgage, I mean, it really did ruin much of my day yesterday, because naturally the very first thing that came in my head was, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, how will I live so carefully. And when Alan died, my choices were based on how could I live lean so that I could keep doing what I do. And I thought, well, there's, go home. And my arrival here was just in time. I was here for the last 6 months of my father's life, and I was able to be quite helpful. It was wonderful to be here and to have that time with him. And I thought, well, I'm living in a house that's paid for. I can drive my father's 18-year-old car. Yes, it's got problems, but, this keeps me lean. And now we're looking at a mortgage, basically, because that's what it is. This isn't something that you can just budget for on a monthly basis and go, well, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm always reluctant to say what is going on. I'm reluctant to ask for help. That's me. And I think that stems from, if you need help, you're vulnerable. And in this system, this predatory system, no one wants to be vulnerable. For all of you who have supported and continue to support, I'm grateful, and it is so appreciated. So the shock that I went through yesterday really was, how do I carry on? And the first reaction was, I can't. I'll have to find a way of having a real income. And that means no real history, no not yours, nothing except just put up an old talk and try to maintain the website the best that I can. I mean, in other words, I can add nothing. And I believe that I am giving you something that is worth putting out there, or I really wouldn't do it. So I'm just saying, I'm grateful for those who support, and carrying forward, I will be reminding you that I've got the videos, the talks I put up on Odyssey. If you like to go to Odyssey, there's a Cutting Through the Matrix site there. If you like to go to Rumble, you'll see videos there. If BitChute is where you hang out, there's Cutting Through the Matrix on BitChute. There's Cutting Through the Matrix on YouTube. There's the little Twitter presence for what that is worth. When you see a video, if you can like it, if you can subscribe to the channels, if you can pass the information on to other people, if there are other tangible ways in which you want to support going forward, that is really appreciated. So, yes, I spiraled into this dark, defeated place yesterday, and I had this 2.5 years ago with every obstacle, and there have been many, and I will not recount them all, but all of the obstacles that came up, I would always think to myself, Lord help the man or the woman that comes between me and keeping this work going. This is my fierce dedication. And then I thought, well, this, when you're dealing with the state, when you're dealing with bureaucracy, it's not a man or a woman, it's the beast. But as the hours wore on, and now I'm into, 24 hours since this horrific appearance in front of the tax board, I asked myself the question, what if the woman who is standing between me and what needs to be done is me? Because of my reluctance to say, hey, if this matters to you, then please consider supporting it. If you value what I'm doing, then please let me know that in a way that helps me to continue to do it. So, okay, there you go, there it is. I want to say something else. I had mentioned to you back, I think it was late August, when I had Joanne and Darren, and we were speaking about Petrosito's activism work regarding the farm murders in South Africa. And I've made several pleas for people to go to his crowdfunding page on BackaBuddy and support this work. And I said, it's a really modest amount that they are crowdfunding, and it would be great. And I made my modest contribution, and I know that a few listeners did make contributions, and I appreciate that. But I received in the early part of September an email from someone that I had not heard from, and he said that he wanted to make a contribution to the work that I was doing, and he said, I'm 20 years old, I'm from Alberta, Canada, and I've been listening to Alan's talks for about 2 years now. Alan's talks have made a profound impact on my life, and I'd like to thank you, as well as Alan, for all the work that you two did over the years, and for the talks and videos that you continue to put out. I appreciate everything you've done. Then he let me know that he had donated to Petrus's BackaBuddy account, and he said, I'll be watching how many people donate to him over the next 2 weeks. And if he doesn't reach his stated goal by September the 19th, I will donate the amount of money that is needed for him to reach his goal. On the 20th of September, he emailed and said, as promised, I helped Petrus reach his fundraising goal. Unfortunately, Petrus did not receive many donations since the talk that you did with Joanne and Darren. I think a lot of people refrain from doing what is right because society and all the problems within it breed an apathy towards any notion of change for the better. But even if we got to a point where people's ability to change anything was futile, I personally would still go ahead and do what I think is right in the moment, despite this. If people truly believe that this life is worth living, which I would assume they presuppose considering the fact that they're alive and they live their lives as if it matters, then what would be better than doing that which you know is right? It can be hard to tell how our own actions will affect the world, but from my own limited experiences, I can say without a doubt that the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. Petrus said simply, God bless this young man. And Darren was, moved and thankful on behalf of Petrus and Joanne. And Joanne also wrote and said, please pass our thanks to this individual. We are truly grateful. What he says is true. An act of kindness can change the world. I watched a movie many years ago called Pay It Forward. It was a beautiful story which I will never forget. An act of kindness to a stranger and only ask them to pay it forward. It can move mountains. If only there were more people who thought like this. And she carried on. But that is it. And I know that we're living in a time right now. I see this regularly now, that people have to crowdfund to cover medical expenses and funeral costs. And I would imagine, certainly we live in a world in which, who do you trust and what is worth supporting? What is worth supporting? And I would imagine that we're all a little bit stunned when we look at the overwhelming amount of work that needs to be done if we're going to turn things around and change things. So, and further, I know how challenging life can be and how bills can weigh you down, and you can wonder from month to month how you're going to get by. And I know when I did my real history with my Aunt Betty and the value of $1 US, she'd never listened to Alan, but she certainly had some good old common sense and wisdom about her. And she too struggles with property taxes. And she said, you don't own your house, because when they can charge you whatever they want on taxes, they can just take it off of you that way. And that's so true. That is true. And on the spiritual, philosophical level, we don't own anything. We can't take it with us, and that's a fact. I just want to be able to concentrate on what I'm doing and have a mind that is clear and focused. And boy, financial stresses, they just take the wind right out of the creative sail. Since embarking on this solo journey of trying to keep things going and add my own unique perspective, there have been a lot of obstacles and challenges, real, and then the threat of things as well. And I have lived my life in a way that you might say is on faith. That if I do these things that I believe are the right things, one way or another, I'll be okay. And I have been. And I've had worries I've had potential worries too. And one that I did not share with you, about 3 months ago, I got a letter from a tax board, and they said, you owe us $30,000 in back taxes. It's $8,000 in taxes, estimated, $8,000 in estimated taxes, and then all of the interest and fines make that a $30,000 bill. Can you please pay this? The funny thing about that bill was they said, if the amount that you owe us is less than $25,000, then you can make it on payments. We can set up a payment plan with you. But if the amount that you owe us is over $25,000, then you cannot make a payment plan. It has to be done in one lump payment. And I thought, it's bureaucracy. This is crazy. Obviously, if somebody owes you more than $25,000, they really need a payment plan. But no, that is not how the system worked. Well, I looked at this tax bill and I realized that this was estimated taxes for me in a place that I didn't live at a time that I didn't live there because I was in Canada. So I made my case. I said, you've estimated taxes for me when my existence there was, non-existent. And then I just said, I'm not going to worry about this. I'm going to put it out of my mind. I've done what I can do. I can't believe that they would continue to persist in this because, I wasn't there. And sure enough, I did ultimately receive a letter, then have to make a phone call, then have to supply some documentation. And, about a month ago, I got a letter saying, okay, you're right, you don't owe us any money. And that is the end of us on this case. But this is how life is in the system. It is designed, and Alan has talked about this over and over, that it is the youth. That's why they go for the youth, because the youth don't yet have the mortgages. They don't have all of these financial worries, and they can be brainwashed into going out and protesting whatever, getting behind whatever cause they're directed to be behind. And then when they marry, now that was in the old days when people married and had children and got mortgages, and things are different now, but then they spend the rest of their life chasing the carrot, exhausted, checking out with a beer in a football game, and that is the system. And it's very true that these kinds of worries are distracting. It was hard for me. It was actually impossible for me to think about creative things or want to read the news or think about anything except, how will I pay this? So I'm better today. I'm a little more myself, which is, I know that what I'm doing matters. And it matters to me. If it doesn't matter to anybody else, it matters to me. And I'm back with fortitude. So that's it. I am going to share, as I said, a bit of Miss Effie talking with Alan, and I hope that you get something from it. And go, for all of you who support, thank you again. It's essential. And please like, subscribe, forward, share. It does make a difference. Thank you.
Yeah, what would you like to talk about? And just talk about when you were young, the difference starting up when you were young.
Well, I was thinking about that. You could approach it from different angles. And one, I was thinking, like I said, the thing that I always could get more concise out of it is the continuity, not hearing one story, reading one subject, but I was thinking about, I forgot the word, enticement.
Yeah.
In 75 years, you went from government enticement to government slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw some of it. I don't have to make a story, nor do I have to dramatize it.
Yeah.
It's right there. And it all started, well, it didn't, rain don't come in the middle of a sunshiny day.
Yeah.
And so it started the time when my grandfather, around the 18th century, when he had to go out and leave his spring cropping. To put his spring crop in, he had to go out and work at his old job as a tugboat captain to get hard money to pay taxes.
Yeah.
That was the beginning, and luckily my grandmother was strong enough and willing enough to finish the plowing.
Yeah. Was it on the Mississippi?
No, they lived about 50 miles from here.
Yeah.
And they had bought a place, and they were independent, really independent.
Yeah.
And so that was the first crack of that reaching in taxes.
Yeah, when was that? Yeah.
Huh?
When do you think that happened?
Well, I know at the time and everything, it had to be around the last of the 18th century. Because they evidently, they had moved there, and the children were small.
Yeah.
Because they had as everybody else, they had a large family and boys. My dad had to pay a poll tax before he could vote.
A poll tax, eh? Yeah.
The law was moving in.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for the law to get things moving. And so then about that time, about my time, was when they pulled off the Big Depression. And the Great Piper.
Yeah.
Frankfurt and Eldon Roosevelt. Come up on the scene.
The Miracle Man, eh? Yeah.
Yes, Pied Piper.
Yeah. Well, first they knock the banks down, and then they come in with the solutions. It's pretty obvious, too, anybody that studied history, that he didn't just move in and make up the plan as he was going along. It was a massive, multifaceted plan.